Sorry about that little break there. I had to attend to something.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'll definitely do another bison hunt at some point, but since they get less views every time, it's like trying to put on a big production for folks and then you're getting less attention for it. And it's not like it's all about the attention, but to go through the whole process and what it costs to put on the big production. At this point, I'm kind of thinking I can probably sum up what I need to do with Folsom without doing the hunt. I can just reference the other hunts because I just don't think that we're going to have a lot to really show that's different. It's
Hmm.
just going to be another bison hunt, which is fine, but what are we really accomplishing at the end of the day per the time and the effort that goes into it? So, I mean, and I had basically said when we did the Clovis project, the first one, because now we have on to number two, bison number two. After the first one, I said, you know what? Um, the very first bison hunt, I expected to do really, really well, and it did it okay. I really feel like we should have been able to reach a lot more people, but as we know too, YouTube's getting tougher and tougher to reach people. And it seems like silly, mindless, fun and funny content gets a lot of attention, and educational stuff, let's be honest, just isn't that fun for most people. That's not
Hmm.
what appeals to the average person. So therefore, the algorithm doesn't favor it. Um, but we see that throughout time as well, that even though subscriber counts rise and all that kind of stuff, overall attention spans, especially with short form video, becoming very popular within the last couple of years, attention spans to really watch documentaries is all but gone. I mean, that's why the Discovery Channel and National Geographic and all they don't do just documentaries, like they did when I was a kid. Now
Right.
it's
Mhm.
reality TV and stunts and silliness. But um, that all being said, I don't know that I'll go and do a full bison hunt production again this time around, because after the Clovis video, I said if this one doesn't do very well, then because if Clovis doesn't do well, nothing's going to. Clovis is such a big topic,
Hmm.
in the world of both archaeology and enthusiasts that are interested in stone projectiles and whatnot. Most people in this realm know what Clovis is. And if they don't, it's a matter of time. So it's like really a hot topic. So to go actually be the first person, without a doubt, I've yet to see anything to actually go build Clovis and with all contextual stuff, all stone tools, like their toolkit, but use that to make the Clovis, everything, then go hunt and kill a bison, then fully butcher a bison with the Clovis toolkit. Nobody's done that before. Like that's never happened in modern times. That's not happened since 12,800 years ago. So I kind of expected it to do fairly decent, and it's what I would consider a flop. It really wasn't a full flop, but compared to other platforms that just have more traffic, they can go do just you know, a half-hearted bison butcher and get a tremendous amount more attention because their overall channel is based on more appealing content to the average person, where my stuff is very niche down to primitive hunting. So again, because we're not really, I mean, I could go into all sorts of excuses why my channel is not doing as well as I would like it to, but that doesn't change the fact that the more of these we do, and then the second bison film thus far is like a little less or a little bit more than half as good as the first one did.
Hmm.
So it's going to get less every time, and I feel like we put a lot of effort, a huge amount of effort into these productions, because you're there,
Right.
filming for us. But you put all of this effort and then days of editing, and it doesn't even
Nightmare.
include the weeks of work behind the scenes to build all of the stuff and then to film all of not only the building of the stuff, but then to sit down and do like my personal interviews and talking through it with people, and then for it to only reach a very small amount of people is very discouraging. And so I just know that doing a Folsom bison hunt's kind of just gonna say it's gonna be like, well, okay, well, you've already done, four of these, so what's a fifth? It's not anything new and exciting. It's old hat at that point. It's not that it's not important, and it's not that I don't love to do it, but I almost feel like if we're gonna try to do something that's a big production, it's got to be something that nobody's really seen before, and nobody had seen going and hunting bison with stone projectiles, especially atlatls. Nobody had seen that before several years ago when I did it, and that's why we got a pretty good turnout on that one. But now, like I said, it's kind of old hat, and now that you have, as we talked about at the very beginning of this, we've got other groups that are spinning off of it, and they're doing their own, um, either their own penetration tests, or they're um, getting together with people and they're butchering animals, or butchering bison. Bison's now starting to be a common thing that people are seeing on YouTube, and so it's again, it's kind of old hat. I guess I'm really glad that I was the first one to get up there and do it, and kind of paved that way. It's just sad to kind of see that one fade out because now it's been overdone. It's like how many ways can you shoot a whitetail, like on TV? You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
think about hunting shows. When hunting shows first came out and they were on cable, they blew up,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. So that's why they ended up making their whole channels, like Sportsman Channel, Outdoor Channels, because
Mhm.
they did so well and they made a lot of money. And now those channels really suffer. In fact, I think it's gone. I don't really know, but
I don't know.
yeah, it's like, and that's it. We don't know because how many different ways can you watch somebody shoot a whitetail?
And we're hunters, and we're like, this
Yeah,
is our
we
life
we
revolves around this stuff.
yeah, and we
We don't
enjoy it.
know.
Yeah, and that's what you hear from the in quotation celebrity hunters, as they used to be called. Nowadays, there's not really a lot of celebrity hunters because it became so mainstream that now nobody's really watching it. Those people now have YouTube channels
Right.
because that's really the only place they're getting any traffic. And if you really watch what's going on, they're getting less and less and less traffic all the time. And it's like, well, the market's flooded with it, and
Hmm.
it's hard to get the views. And I'm not really complaining too much about that because it's serving a purpose. My videos are serving a purpose. I'm reaching the people that I'm meant to reach. But at the end of the day, to throw down, $15,000, on the short side of a bison hunt production, and that's just the
It's the
monetary
hunt. Yeah.
cost. Yeah, that's not the all the time, the shop time that it actually takes away from my business, because I'm sitting, in front of a computer, or I'm building stuff that doesn't actually pay money to put into a different project. It's just not going to be worth it, I don't think, to go kill another one. But it's kind of weird because I've been working on this Folsom stuff lately just to finish out this book. And I've had that itch, and I'm like, man, I want to go spear another bison. And then it's like, I do, but, and I'm not saying I won't because I know that I'll kill another one, but, at some point, but am I going to make a production? And unfortunately, I think the answer is probably no, not unless something drastic happens and you know, all of a sudden the last Clovis video just takes off and people are like, hey, we love this. Maybe it's a delayed reaction to it. Maybe it becomes very popular and that within the next year and something ticks and it takes off. But yeah, I just don't see necessarily doing another one. I'll have to come up with something even better, which is tough. That would be an elephant, but as we discussed, that's a that's a tough gameplay right there.
Oh, yeah. Probably, like you said, it'd be counterproductive in the big picture.
Yeah, I'd get a lot
Um,
of views. I'd probably get kicked off YouTube also. I mean, think about that.
yeah.
Guy goes and kills an elephant with a spear, or a
Mhm.
group of guys. That's a good way to get kicked off of YouTube altogether. Of course, I guess they do have African hunters that shoot elephants on there, but
Yeah.
they probably don't get the hate that we would for spearing one.
Probably not. What about a bear? Have you thought about that? And
Yeah, yeah. I've always really wanted to go spot and stock atlatl kill a bear, but legal issues are what really stops that. There are some places you can do it, but like the time that it's going to take to do that is a lot. As you know, even hunting hogs with an atlatl. You were the one that filmed my very first,
Mhm.
atlatl kill, which was the hog. And I look back at that now and think, what a miracle that that ever came together. Like impossible.
It was really tough. That
Yeah.
was a really tough one. And it looks, we talked about it in the video, but a little
In the
bit,
video, it
but
looks easy. Yeah. You're
looks
just like, well,
easy, right? Like,
you're just
yeah,
standing there. And
sure.
when it steps out, you spear it. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, well,
Didn't see the 3 days of sitting around, nothing happening.
yeah.
Not even
And
seeing pigs for days.
yeah. And in 3 days to get it done, that's the
That's the last
miracle.
morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the miracle of it because the reality is I've done a lot of atlatl hunting since then, for hogs, and I've killed 4 hogs total with the atlatl. And some of them just, I mean, you may put in cumulatively several weeks of hunting before you kill one. So there's a lot of hunting trips until you get it done. And so when I think about that on a hog standpoint, where hogs are a lot more numerous than bears. So to go to Alaska and say, let's go do a bear hunt. I mean, there are places that are going to have a lot of bears for sure, but there probably are some places that it wouldn't be as difficult. But let's just, hypothetically say you get out somewhere and start looking for bears. We can go to some places with hogs, and hogs are there and you're going to get in on them because there's more than one. Obviously, hogs are, kind of proliferous in that sense where a bear, this might be the only bear within 5 miles. So if you mess
Mhm.
this one up, now you got to go try to find another one. So you're not going to get multiple opportunities in a day like you would in a place that's got a lot of pigs. You're probably going to be looking at, I'm going to get one opportunity a week, or one every few days. And I could see that being, I mean, it's a huge challenge and I would love to do it. But I also know the atlatl does not get nearly as much attention as the bow and arrow. So
Mhm.
for me to shoot one with a bow and arrow, because that would actually get more attention than spearing one with the atlatl. And the reason that, which doesn't sound logical to me, to me,
Right.
I'm like, because that's what I always thought, man, shoot, people watch the atlatl stuff way more than they will the bow and arrow. But what I learned is they don't because they can't relate to it as much.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
hunters don't even know what one is,
yeah.
let alone
And
the
then
average person.
and because they can't relate to it, they either think, hey, it's like the whole thing's fake, or the animals must be tame, or they take the jealous approach to it because they can't do it or haven't done it or whatever, that you know they look at something and say, oh well, that is just a little hog, you should see the big ones that I shoot with my 30-06. It's like
Yeah.
totally, like that has nothing to do with any of this. But because they can't relate to it, the atlatl stuff really doesn't get a lot of attention anyway. And I even see that from the sales side. Sales of bows and arrows significantly higher than atlatls by far.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. And then, but
Makes sense.
think about how people start off in hunting in general. People start off hunting, a lot of people, and I mean, there's different starting points, but most people start off with rifles or firearms. And a lot of them start off in stuff like shooting houses over green fields and stuff like that. And then as that becomes easier, maybe they're up in a more exposed tree stand and then they're, hunting with a rifle. And then as they get proficient with that, they're going to make another step. They're going to take a step to maybe a muzzleloader, but they're going to go with like the new modern inline muzzleloader, right? With the scope, and you can shoot 200 yards with the dang thing and whatnot. And um, then people will get into archery hunting. And more times than not, I've found that some people just love bow hunting, like with a compound, just because they love the idea of shooting a bow or a compound or whatever. But some people do it just because it gives them another few weeks to be in the woods just to hunt.
Mhm.
And then
Sure.
once they do it, the second that rifle season comes in, the bow's done.
Hmm.
They're on to the rifle, right? So they just want to be in the woods with more opportunity and to enjoy the woods. Then you have guys that take on the bow, love the bow so much that when rifle season comes in, they're still going to hunt with their compound bow, right? So
Hmm.
those are the guys that truly love it. Now, those amount of people are significantly less than the people that will go to the gun as soon as the gun season comes in, right? I think most
For
people agree
sure.
with that. So now you think about traditional bow hunting, people that hunt with fiberglass recurves and longbows, and they shoot carbon arrows or wood arrows with, 2 or 3 blade glue on or screw in broadheads. Maybe they hunt in some nostalgic camo, or maybe they wear plaid or something like that because it's a little bit more difficult. Those people do that because they love it, and a lot of those people, they do that throughout the gun season as well because they just are in love with traditional bow hunting. And that group of people is so much less than the dedicated compound bow hunters, and then compare that to the rifle hunters, right? So now you take one group of people and then you neck it down way more into primitive bow hunters, people that want to hunt with wooden bows, stone points, cane arrows. And then you can even neck it down further to where, like what I do, where I shoot sinew bowstrings and all natural glues and everything. I don't want anything modern at all. And I'm hunting in brown pants and like a painted shirt type deal that more represents buckskin. But that group of people is tiny compared to the average hunter, right?
Mhm.
Then take that and render that down into the atlatl. So, when you think about where you started with people that are hunting with guns, which is a majority of people, let's just arbitrary numbers. Let's say we've got 1 million people that love to hunt and they will hunt with a rifle, a compound, anything. Then knock down to where maybe you've got 300,000 people comparably that will only hunt with a compound even during gun season. Then you're going to take that 300,000 and you're going to nick it down to, I would say, conservatively, 50,000 compared to that original million are probably traditional bow hunters, right? A
Mhm.
very small fraction. By
Oh
the
yeah.
time you get this down to the atlatl, you've got 1 million hunters versus 5 people that hunt with the atlatl. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh, it is like that.
well, like it
We
really is
and
because I don't.
we know all five of them.
We know all 5 of them. That's exactly right. That actually go out and hunt with it. So
Yeah.
when they see that, you just can't relate to modern hunters. So when you'd say, "Man, we're going to go out and so like example here, guy that goes and has a whole hunting show based on I go out and shoot stuff with rifles or occasionally a compound bow. And then this is my video channel. Then all of a sudden he does a video of, hey, and he's got a huge following, right? Say he's got millions of followers because that demographic is huge.
Right. Just more to draw from.
Right. So then he does a video, about, well, we're going to skin a bison with stone tools. It doesn't even have to be a good video. He's automatically going to get a huge number of views because of the uh, the following that he
Right.
has.
Hmm.
But even that, when you look at statistics, which I kind of do, it's like that video actually didn't do very well for him
I looked at
overall
that.
compared to
Yes,
that.
I
Yeah.
noticed that.
And
Hmm.
it's because it just doesn't relate to people. So then if you take somebody like me that's got um, a relatively small following, say, I don't know, what is 170,000 or something on YouTube, which is not small, but it's not millions. you know, I do a video, really doing the educational side of this. We're just reaching nobody at the end of the day, because it's so unrelatable to
Hmm.
people. They're just not that interested in it overall. But that's just
That's just the
that
numbers. That's just facts. It's
it,
just
it is. And it's not really an excuse for anything other than why I wouldn't want to go and do it again. you know, put all that money into it
count me
again
in. Yeah.
to get less and less people. But it's the opposite of the way that I thought it would be. Because
Because it's unique. It's so
yeah,
unique.
the way that I
It should
work,
be interesting to anyone that's ever hunted or even thought about hunting or is in
yeah,
the outdoors. I mean, it's so unique and
yeah,
like you said, it's never been done before.
I thought that even guys that had no aspirations of ever throwing an atlatl or using one period, that gun hunters would see somebody using atlatls to go kill bison, and they would be like, I have to watch this. This is like the coolest thing in the world. And the reality is that huge million of modern hunters in that one side that, that we said, they look at it and they say, this is the dumbest thing that I've ever seen in my life. It's the complete opposite. I'm like, you should love this. This would be so cool. And they're like, this is the dumbest thing ever. And the reason we know that is because when we get the comments from those people, they always say stuff like, um, why would you do this? I can kill it in like 3 seconds when I shoot it in the head with my
Yeah, whatever.
375.
Right.
Yeah, it's
They
like,
completely
well,
missed the point
yeah,
completely.
where I can take my, my 6.5 Creedmoor and I could shoot that thing at 1,000 yards and it wouldn't even know I was there.
Hmm.
Like they just don't, it's not relatable.
Yeah, I use the because I worked at Bass Pro for like 7 years, so I had so many interactions with hunters and fishermen, and like when I was 3 years old, I loved like fishing for bluegills with a bobber with a worm underneath, or catfish on the bottom, just sitting there with my grandpa, and like it was great when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 57. That's I
Yeah.
need a little bit more excitement than that. I need it, like fishing for me needs to be a hunt. It has to be, you're hunting for trout or hunting for tarpon, or like you'd think the progression for most hunters would be to make things more and more difficult. But I think, like you said, for the average hunter, it doesn't ever become more difficult because they want the
Like,
easy button. They, you know what I mean? They might be intrigued in some ways to about it, if they've even heard of an atlatl, but traditional bow hunting, forget it. That's way too hard. That can't be done. And then even though it's been documented thousands of times that it can be done.
yeah.
I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but I'm just saying, like, for me personally, I want to grow as an outdoorsman, as a woodsman. And if I just had always, if I'm still fishing with a bobber and a worm, like what do I get out of that? I mean, catch some fish and have a fish fry, but like nobody
Like,
wants to watch that video, that's for sure.
right. Well, what it comes down to is um they're just wanting to catch a bigger fish at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with hunters. A lot of them, they don't feel the need to make it more challenging for a couple of reasons. Number one is hunting's not their number one priority in life. They
Hmm.
enjoy to hunt, but your average person does not take hunting. Your average hunter does not take hunting very seriously. It's a weekend warrior thing. It's time to get away. It's an escape probably from either a family that they don't like or a wife they don't like or a job that they don't really like, and they live for that weekend to get out. And there's nothing wrong with that it's
Hmm.
like, you always hope that you want people to have the very best in their life and enjoy every day. But if hunting's not something that they're super passionate about, it's an escape for them. Like it's no different than guys that go hunting but they really don't ever go in the woods. They just go to hunting camp to drink beer and play cards.
Sure.
um, so, you have to really look at it from the serious hunting now, the side of it. So the guys that are serious about it, most of those people don't look for a more challenging way to kill the animal. They look for an easier way because it becomes a competition of A, who kills more deer, or B, who kills a bigger deer. So
Hmm.
it's the we don't need to catch more fish, or it is. It's like I don't want to fish. I don't want to go to fly fishing because I can catch more fish on a worm. So I'm either going to catch more fish or I'm going to use a bigger worm and try to catch a bigger fish, or I'm just going to keep fishing until I catch the bigger fish with this. But I still stand a better chance at catching the bigger fish or killing the bigger buck if I'm hunting with the rifle or the compound bow, or then people that maybe have killed a bunch of nice bucks with a compound that maybe they get older and they move into the traditional bow. But I still hear that it's a comfort zone with people and it's wherever makes them happy. So I don't criticize anybody for any of it
Yeah, it's not
because I
wrong.
don't need to. Like
Right.
like I talked to Clay Hayes specifically at one point about hunting with stone points because when him and I got together and hunted, um, he really kind of drew the line at he wouldn't mind shooting something with a stone point at some point in time, but he was very content to shoot steel points pretty much forever because he's like, I don't want to miss the opportunity on something because I'm shooting a stone point. Where the goal for me was to shoot the stone point. The goal to me wasn't necessarily to just kill every animal that I can with a bow. It's to kill the animals with the stone points because that's the piece that was important to me. But see, that's not important to him. That's just his individual preference. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that at all. Well, then you continue to scale that back to somebody that says, I just want to go out on the weekends and shoot deer. And so if I'm going to do that, this compound bow is going to give me the best opportunity. But I've been asked this question, as I know you have, and any other traditional archer, when they're talking to somebody that's hunting with a compound, the compound hunter will say, well, what are you going to do when that 12-point buck steps out at 50 yards? And you're sitting there with that, and you're like, not shoot at it. And they're like, can't comprehend that
Yeah,
because they're devastated that they can't kill it because that's the moment that they've been waiting for.
yeah,
And so therefore they have to have the weapon in their hands that's going to give them the best chance to make that kill. Like if they're allowed to hunt with a rifle, they're going to hunt with the rifle because they need to kill that buck. That's what the challenge is for them. The challenge isn't in the hunting implement. The challenge is hunting a bigger deer, right?
mhm,
So it's
right.
like a deep sea fisherman doesn't go out and use artificials. Not typically. I'm talking about like bottom fishing, like for grouper or something like that. The
Mhm.
idea is to you just want to keep trying to catch bigger grouper. You're not really trying to do it. You're not trying to
It's
convince
not
one to
meant to
come
be
off.
sporting.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of the same thing. Their challenge is more based on how do I get the bigger buck? Because also remember that's been fueled by that TV push of the celebrity hunters, that came out 10 years ago. Nobody really cared. I mean, they wanted to shoot nice bucks, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't this huge piss and match over who can grow the biggest deer. Remember like quality deer management and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
None of that was a thing until television made it a thing because it was who could shoot something with the biggest antlers on it. And that's what also again fuels the how do you make weapons so you can shoot stuff easier, or what do I stand the best chance to get that? So it's like there was two paths that people would take: chase bigger deer or chase a more challenging hunt. And it was an easy choice for me because I grew up in Florida. We don't have big deer down here, not
mhm,
compared to the Midwest or even in the North. So the idea of just going and trying to shoot a 180-inch whitetail in Florida is you stand a better chance of hitting a lottery,
yeah.
no
You
matter
have to be on a
what.
game farm, like one of those ranches that are
Yeah.
high fence.
So but we've got plenty of deer in places, and then you've got hogs and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
it's like, how do I make the hunt more challenging? Start building my own equipment, shooting stone points, and then graduating from there to shooting sinew bowstrings, and then kick it back to the atlatl, make it as tough as we absolutely can.
the other
And
way I look at it too is it's not necessarily making it more difficult. For me, it's more like being more immersed in the process, right? Like so, I could buy flies at the fly shop. They're as good or better than the ones that I sell or that I tie to fish with, but I didn't tie it. I don't want to catch a fish on a fly I didn't tie. You know what I mean?
you're right.
So it's immersing yourself, and it's year round for us, as hunters and the way we do it in anglers. But it's I guess we're just kind of throwbacks in the sense that I want to be completely immersed in it, whatever it is. It could be art, it could be music, it could be fly fishing, it could be. I'm not a part-time anything. You know what I mean? The things that I'm really passionate about, I'm in all. I'm all in, and I'm sure obviously you are too.
Yeah,
Like like to me, it's not necessarily making it harder. It's although at times it is partly that, but it's just immersing myself in that experience and making it all kind of try to come together. And if it doesn't, you still had the joy of like tying those flies or napping at arrowhead, or like I'm starting to build self bows and cane arrows and stuff like that. That's a big part of the enjoyment for me at least.
it is. Well, that's how most people are that are at the neck down level that we are with this stuff, is they want their ultimate goal is to build their own stuff, right? So like with you wanted to you tie your own flies and tie your own tippets, and then people get into they want to build their own rods or whatever. But to start that process, they're typically going to go buy that stuff to get started. But the end goal is there. And that's what I see with people getting into primitive archery specifically is, I've heard people say, comment on my stuff on social media, which that, takes all types on there. But they'll say, stuff like, well, what's the point of buying a bow or arrowheads? You're supposed to make it yourself. And that's not necessarily true, but I know that's the goal for most people. But to jump into it at the level that I did, most people are going to it's going to take years before they ever produce anything themselves that they could actually go kill a deer with,
Hmm.
if they're going to go, the real primitive route. So, like with my business specifically, most of the people that are my customers are people that are on their own journey, but they haven't figured out how to nap yet. You know what I mean? So then
Yeah.
they're watching my videos on learning how to nap, but then they buy the napping supplies and buy rocks and they're practicing. And at some point, they're going to have it figured out and they're not going to need me anymore. You know what I mean? And that's fine. They're going to be off doing it themselves. But it's like what I do is I basically create a stepping stone. Same thing with
Hmm.
people that ultimately they're like, I want to build my own bow. So they'll buy my bow building book and sometimes start off with another bow, or they say, you know what, I want to get started in on this right. I'm going to purchase one of your bows. I'm going to use it. Ultimately, I'm going to build my own bow. When my own bow is as good as your bow, they don't need my bow anymore. And that's perfectly fine. So it's like I'm like that conduit for people that want to build their own stuff, but aren't necessarily looking to say, okay, well, um, getting out their future calendars and saying, okay, well, in 3 years from this season, I'll be ready to hunt. Because it's a huge process, to do
It
all of this
is.
stuff. Like
Yeah.
with traditional archery, you can get on Three Rivers Archery and just order everything you would need.
You've been hunting tomorrow
Yeah, as soon
or
as it
whenever,
comes in the
the
mail,
week that it
yeah,
comes in the
it's
mail.
ready to go. Well,
Yeah.
primitive is a little more difficult yet than that, which of course why there's so many more traditional hunters yet than there are primitive hunters. Um, so buying into primitive stuff is a good way to get started. Um, See, I didn't buy any into anything when I first got started. Of course, there wasn't really anybody to buy from. You could buy some, a little bit of primitive stuff from the back of a magazine or from the primitive section at Three Rivers back then and that kind of stuff. But none of it was really geared towards real hunting. It was more like
Mhm.
craft type of stuff. And so nothing really proven as far as going out in the field and actually, killing animals with this stuff. That's another interesting fact too, that, you know, you really can't go wrong with any fiberglass laminated bow that's on the market today. Like if
Mhm.
you bought a fiberglass laminated bow that's like 50 pounds, you could get it and then use like any market available arrow and broadhead and go shoot deer and it'll kill deer just as dead as any of them, right? With the primitive stuff, you can mess up really bad. So that's of course what makes it more difficult, because if you just make your own arrowheads, but your arrowheads suck, you're not even going to penetrate a deer. You could have a great bow, but
Yeah.
the arrowheads aren't going to go in. Or if your arrows are flying like garbage, it's going to be hard to hit whatever you want. And then same thing with the bow. You can get a bow or you could build a bow and it could functionally shoot an arrow, but it could be terribly slow. And so you now all of a sudden now you're sitting here looking at, I've got a bow, I've got arrows, and I got stone points. And I shot a deer, it didn't penetrate, and now you're sitting back looking and going, what went wrong? Was it the
Mhm.
bow? Was it the arrow? Was it the stone points? Was it me? Was it all of the above? Was it the bow and the stone points? Was it the arrow and the stone points? Was it the me and the stone point? Like now it's all these combinations. So that's one of the things that makes it so difficult. And that's why I usually do tell people, that I'm not even a pitch to say people should come buy from me, but that is like one of the bigger pitches that I have is we specifically go out in the field and we shoot animals with this stuff. And that's
It
why we know this
works.
stuff works. But you gotta make sure that if you're gonna buy this stuff, you have to get stuff that's proven to work. If you're buying bows or arrows or points from people that have never killed an animal with it, you don't know if it's actually functionally capable of doing that any more than if you just made one yourself.
Especially the
And
arrowhead, I think, especially
definitely,
'cause that's
yep,
really what does the killing, because I can see somebody could be into flint knapping for just get started, and 3 years later, you think, like you said, like it could still suck 3 years later after napping a bunch of heads.
yep,
Whereas you can go to Walmart and buy the worst, cheapest broadhead and stick it on the arrow and kill the first deer you see with it.
yep.
Even if it's terrible, like it shouldn't work, but it does because it's metal and it's very sharp and out of the package. Like, yeah, it's not even the time. It's like you have to get good at it, not
Yeah.
just
They
put in
take the
the time.
they take the human element out of the build because
Yeah,
the builds developed, and then it's once they know that it works, they can just stamp it out and
yeah.
then they can sell it. So you already know the combination works. That's not a big deal.
Mhm.
But a stone point, you don't have that. You have a lot of variables with it. And it's not that stone points are inherently bad performers or they take a long time to kill animals, because they don't. They're really efficient. You just don't have that repeatability unless you know what you're really, really doing. Like people that see my stone points, they're not a hodgepodge of whatever I make. They're all very consistent and similar. They're
Yeah, they
based
look the same.
around,
One to the next looks the same,
yeah. And it's
absolutely.
because we've killed 60 plus big game animals with them. So we
Mhm.
know they work. And it's so, and then if people model theirs after mine, that's the best thing that they could possibly do.
Yeah, and it's and you've modified it over time, right? You didn't start with the perfect point. Over time, shooting animals, and like you streamlined them. Like the transition from the head to the shaft and all that. You've refined it.
Yep.
Like probably your first stone point isn't anywhere near as good as the point you're hunting with now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. First stone point I ever made, I bounced off of a deer. So yeah,
Yeah,
that tells you that was an eye opener for me. So, and then another one I penetrated about 2 inches into it. So, and then another one I shot and penetrated probably about 3 inches, and I didn't find any of those deer. And then I realized that um, that was my weak link. So instead of other people having to find that weak link for themselves, they can watch the videos or get the secrets and science of primitive archery or buy my stuff to use it as an example and learn from all my lessons. And so they can skip that. And maybe they actually get to kill their first 10 deer that they shoot with stone points.
what a concept. Yeah,
Yep.
success is a good thing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So
well,
we can wind it up here. I think we got a couple minutes left. Where can people follow you, Ryan?
they'd hunt primitive
Primitive.
pretty much anywhere. Yep. If they look up hunt primitive, especially if it's all one word, most don't spell primitive wrong. People spell it with a instead of an I. I don't know why, but it's not
Oh,
primitive, it's primitive. So
okay.
hunt primitive. And YouTube videos, especially. Uh, that's really kind of the bread and butter of where I can teach people. And then huntprimitive.com's got all the products, and that's where you can get the books and all of that kind of stuff. So Hunt Primitive is a pretty big hub for learning about anything that folks would want to know about primitive hunting and getting
Awesome.
gear and all of that stuff.
Absolutely. So well, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks because we're doing a pig hunt, and maybe we can talk about that later, like after the hunt. See how that goes. Should be nice and cool.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be nice.
South Central Florida in August.
Yeah.
Get a
Yep,
nice farmer tan, if nothing else.
absolutely. All right. Well, it was nice
Hey,
chatting with you.
you too, man. Thanks
All
again,
right.
Ryan.
All right. See ya.
Yep. Let's see. Stop record. Stop.